Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to episode number 3 of the Corcoran Cap, the podcast where we're talking Warriors, Syracuse, Niners, A's, all my favorite teams. I'm your host, Sam Corcoran. We're kicking it off today with the Golden State Warriors, who have been on fire recently. Joel Pettit joined me, as in his bio, number one Kuminga fan. Joel, how you doing today?
I'm doing great, Sam. How are you?
I mean, I'm doing fantastic. You know, the Warriors. Let's talk about the Golden State Warriors. They've been doing absolutely fantastic recently. And let me just put this out there just to start the episode, how good the Warriors are doing. And I'll let you comment on this, Joel. Yep. Warriors have won the last 11 out of their 13. They're in a 9-game win streak. How do you feel about that, man?
I feel great. We've won in different types of ways during these 9 games. We've won a game without Steph, which in most times during this year and last year would be an automatic loss. We've won close games. We've blown out capable teams. We've done a lot, and we've seen a mix of new faces. Some guys have had to step up with injuries. Draymond's obviously still out. We just have gotten Porter and Iggy back, so we've had to see more from the youngsters, and I've liked a lot of what I've seen.
Yeah, and you know what? Let's just jump right into the youngsters with Jonathan Kuminga, who has been absolutely stellar recently. And I know Joel obviously wants to talk about him. So let's just hand it off to Joel first. I want to say some stuff, but Joel, I know you texted me a few days ago. We have to talk about Kuminga no matter what this week. So I'll let you talk about Kuminga. You said you had a shit ton of notes for it.
I've got some notes. It's starting off with a question. Is this the most exciting rookie in recent Warrior memory?
100%. Yes, oh, easily. It's definitely the most exciting rookie since Steph Curry, in my opinion.
Probably, yeah.
Because, I mean, I wouldn't – Ekpe Udoh bust. Klay Thompson took a little bit to get going.
Klay had his ups and downs as a rookie.
He did, but I think Steph Curry, I mean, he was second in all Rookie of the Year voting, something like that. You haven't really seen anyone like that. Harrison Barnes, not really. You're not really looking at him. This is hands down the most exciting rookie you've seen. Shockingly enough, the Warriors fans were not excited when we drafted him.
I was always in. I loved it.
I feel that.
I watched the draft with people I know. I've got people who can back me up. I was always in on Kuminga. And
interesting.
Got some notes. 14 for 16 on 2-point field goals in his last 2 games. 14 for 16. He was 8 for 8 against the Kings.
That's ridiculous.
On some weaknesses that I've seen. The big two are defensively and a trait I've just noticed repeatedly on offense. I'll start with the defense. He's a 19-year-old. To put into context, he's younger than me. So it's a little weird I'm not going to crush the kid. He's a rookie. Very rarely, especially.
That is weird now. We're starting to get you and I mean, I just want to point out, like, weird. Joel and I graduated high school in June.
It weirded me out that Kuminga is the one where it's like he's the first, because not many guys are younger than me at this point, because he's October 02, I'm September 02. Not many players are in that came into the NBA were born in 2002. I checked the list
It's a weird thing
in
though.
The coming drafts, we're going to start to be older than these kids, and it's weird.
I know. Like next year, you got some guys. There are definitely some guys going in next year who I am older than.
Yeah,
and I mean, look. I'm just like this look at me. Like, if you're watching the audio version, I'm just like this 5'9" scrawny kid. I can't play basketball, and these guys are younger than me and, like, dominate. It just feels so weird. Crazy. But anyways.
So, defense. He's a big athletic guy, and you've seen some things that big athletic guys can do on defense. He's had impressive weak side blocks. He took a charge the other day that was great. He slid his feet really fast. He does get blown by a few times, and just general tricks and trades you get from the experience of playing defense. We've only seen his minutes go up a lot in this win stretch. I've got stats that pertain to this win streak of how he's been playing, but it's been great. I just overall, there's a ton of flashes on offense. He's going to be a guy that shoots a lot of free throws and lives in the lane. So you need to have your fundamentals down when it comes to driving and posting up. Those are two of the biggest ways I see him being a contributor in the paint. His post up and his post up ability and footwork is shockingly polished for a 19-year-old that hasn't played at all in college, only had a year in the G League. So I have been impressed with that. He does bring the ball down too much when you drive. The textbook of offense is dribbling low, but going strong, having the ball. You see it with all the drivers. They love to have the ball around here. he brings the ball down a little too low. I've seen him get stripped. I've seen him, but I don't want to nitpick too much. I want to get to the positives.
Go ahead.
Other
you have
two
a lot more to say.
Number-wise, he's only 30% on threes. Again, he's young and his form looks good. 3% at the line. Those are kinks that are going to get worked out to better. You want mid-70s, mid to upper 30s for threes, but I like what I've seen so far as his mechanics go. All right, what were you going to say?
I'm just going to basically back on everything you said. Kuminga's just been absolutely phenomenal. And I didn't dive too deep. Obviously, you're a guy who loves diving deep into all that stuff. Past 3 games for Kuminga, he's put up 19, 18, and 16, which is something that a lot of people did not expect. I think a lot of people, this is why Warriors fans did not like the draft pick. They were thinking this is going to be a raw prospect, probably a project, needs to develop on a lot of stuff. And he has really just developed a lot faster than we thought he would. And he's made an impact this year, especially with Draymond being out. He has been able to step in there. Hasn't started all the games where Draymond's been out, but he's definitely made an impact. And you could definitely see Draymond be on the move soon because of Kuminga's impact on this team. Also, I definitely agree with you that I think his defense could be a little bit better, but using him more has definitely improved this team significantly, in my opinion. And with him getting more usage, him getting more play time, his time on defense goes up. His defensive efficiency has been going up. So overall, you're really looking at a guy. It's an interesting transition when you're playing. You start with a defensive-minded player in Draymond Green, and Kuminga is definitely more of an offensive-minded player. You're going to see a transition soon where this team is going to be more of a defensive guy, defensive-minded team, trying to center the guys around Steph Curry, who's still good on defense, but not the best defensive point guard. Kuminga, obviously offensive. Clay's pretty good on defense. Obviously, you have him. Wiggins
is a great two-way player. We've got guys that are capable of getting to where we want to get.
100%. And speaking of defense, let's talk about one guy who I have noticed has been fantastic defensively.
Kevon Looney?
Kevon Looney. That's the other guy who could stay in this lineup, depending on what the Warriors decide to do with James Wiseman. His rebounding numbers have been absurd. I think it was double digits in the past few games.
In our 9-game winning streak, he's at close to 10 rebounds a game, a little like 9.8. He has, I think, 4 games in that 9-game stretch of double-digit rebounds. And he's just playing great on defense. On offense, good too. In this win streak, 63 from the field, 82 at the line. When given the opportunity to make free throws and finish around the basket, he's pulling it off. His defense has been it's been borderline elite. He's been at all
it has been.
Switching, he's never in the wrong, he's always in the right spots. But he's just been very good. Very, very good.
Another amazing draft find by the Warriors, 30th pick in 2015. And looking at his stats on paper, he's had in the stretch of since this win streak started against Houston on January 21st, 12 rebounds against Houston, 15 against Brooklyn, 14 against Houston again, 12 against San Antonio. The game before Houston was against Indiana. We lost that game in overtime, 15 boards. And at the first Houston game, he had 4 blocks. So his defense has been very good recently. Offensively, too, he's been doing a pretty solid job on offense. It could be a bit better. He's only averaging 6.3 points this year.
They don't really need him to score. That's the thing.
Exactly. You don't really need an offensive-minded setter. This is a team built on perimeter play. You want to kick the ball out. Your center is just there for the defensive reasons. Man the middle, get the boards, which is something that the Warriors struggled in prior years. Now I feel like Kevon Looney's really coming into his own and doing that. And it's going to be a very interesting decision to see what the Warriors decide to do with James Wiseman or Kevon Looney. I believe Looney's a free agent coming up, so I would think they would stick with Wiseman, considering that I think Looney could get paid somewhere else. But
that's a good. I need to check to see when all the numbers run up. But yes, it's going to be an interesting debate to see. I think it's made a little easier, especially if Wiseman can come back at the end of the season. And more importantly, just if he can progress over this summer coming into next year. If you feel confident in Wiseman being able to be at least a middle of the pack starting center by next year, which isn't too unreasonable of an exptation.
That's not. For a second overall pick from 2 years ago, that's what you're really – and this is what this team really needs. You don't need a –
Yeah, you go continue.
I was just going to say, you're not looking – like this team is not really looking for any more of those Zaza Pachulias where you're kind of like a bottom-tier starting center.
No.
You're looking for a guy who can play middle of the pack. You don't need the best center in basketball, not even a top 10 center, in my opinion. You just need a guy who can get those boards, who can just make sure to facilitate the game from the paint, really. I know we talked about on the Syracuse segment how they have Joe Girard, the point guard. He's really been facilitating everything. You don't really need him to score too much. You just really need a facilitator in him, get the other guys to score. That's the same with Kevon Looney, in my opinion. He needs to just facilitate the game, continue the defensive presence up, especially without Draymond Green, and just dominate. I think, and I want to talk about some other guys real quick. Clay, or go ahead.
Just keeping up in the theme with Looney, when you look at more of the subliminal guys over this winning streak, which has been big, guys have stepped up. Poole in this streak is 17-4-4.
I was about to talk about him.
With guys being out, especially Draymond, and then, just a mixture of new faces, he's continuing to produce. He had over 30 in the crazy San Antonio game. He had 8 assists last night. He had 8 assists and 8 boards. He had a really good all-around game yesterday. Lee, in the past 3 games, is averaging 14 points a game. He was double digits in San Antonio and Sacto. Those were 2 games prior to the OKC game last night. He's been playing well. Moody has gotten opportunity. He's had 3 starts. In those starts, he's 12 a game. He looked confident. His threes have been going in at the start of the year. They were not at all. It was tough for him because he was playing really limited minutes at the end, not being able to get in any sort of rhythm. His shooting was just astronomically bad. But now it's looking good, and he's been balling out in the G League, and it clearly is doing a number for his confidence, and he's taking advantage of the opportunity. Wiggins, rock solid as ever. And then we can get to Clay because that's another big point.
Yeah, I was going to talk about Clay, but really just like the bench as well has been really developing.
Yep.
Damian Lee has also, I would say, he had 18 one of those games. He's been on and off. I mean, you don't really need much from him considering the guard depth on this team, which, by the way, is definitely the deepest guard depth this Warriors team has had in my lifetime, in my opinion.
Steph, Clay,
Poole, Moody,
Lee.
It's a pretty deep team.
Gary Payton II is a guard in terms of build wise. He doesn't play like a guard all the time.
He doesn't really play like that.
If he counts on the roster as a guard, he's very valuable.
100%. And then Klay Thompson is really starting to return to form, in my opinion. His defense has been solid. I mean, he's not there yet. There's going to be some time. He hasn't played basketball. It was 900 days. So I think the Warriors gave it so much time, and he's really showing out and doing really well. So overall,
a few numbers on Clay.
Yeah, go ahead.
He's played 12 games. I think we talked after I don't know if he had gotten to 6 yet, but in these last 6 games of his, he's 19 points a game nearly, 4 boards, 4 assists, 3-to-1 assist to turnover ratio, which is great. 48 from the field, 45 on threes. That sounds like Clay. And 100% at the line. He's yet to miss a free throw this year. Knock on wood. I don't want to jinx him. But, the splits are there. He's been playing great. He's getting just closer and closer. His minutes have gone up. He played nearly 30 minutes last night. I think we are getting to the point of him being almost back. I mean, I think we're looking at in the 80s in terms of percentage of where Clay's at right now, in my opinion, just from what I've seen.
Yeah, I am totally with you on that. You're starting to see him back there doing really well. And, I mean, it's definitely helped us run a lot. So credit to Klay Thompson. We all love Klay Thompson. Now, last thing before we finish the episode, we got a few minutes left. Trade deadline. It's going to be on Thursday. You guys are going to be – when this episode comes out, that's going to be tomorrow. Joel, are there any moves that you think the Warriors can make? And I think for me, I think this Warriors team should stay put. If there's any move, it's you're getting a better center. Maybe you get a very cheap deal for Miles Turner. I would say that's
with Sabonis being traded today, I think they're probably going to keep Turner. I think we'd have to give up too much to get him anyway. So I'm off of Turner. But
I mean, the trade today was ridiculous. Indiana robbed Sacramento.
Oh, that was bad.
And I was they're set up for the future now. I think that puts them in such a good position. You have one of the best 3-point shooters in the league, an up and coming star. I mean, I did see an argument it would open up the ground for Davion Mitchell to get more in the paint. And
it does. I think that was just not a great pick to begin with in terms of fit because they had Healed, Fox, and Halliburton. It's like, what did they have? It was pick 10. Like
It was something like that. They definitely need to free up their guard space.
Oh my
but
God. Yeah, and yes, this is a deep draft. I mean, they could have probably moved up a little if they wanted to. They could have traded back. We've just seen like they didn't need to take Mitchell at 10, and I understand freeing up for him, and he's had some moments, but it's just trading Halliburton was not smart.
100%.
So let's get to the Warriors. One underrated one operating off of that Kings Pacers trade. Rashawn Holmes was the starting center for the Kings before this, and now he will not be because they have Domantas Sabonis. He's making in the tens of millions per year. I don't know how you get the money to work exactly. I don't know, but if we could somehow get him without giving up anything crazy substantial, I would like that. He has a really high motor and he's a great finisher. I just think, and he's played well against us in the past. I think just with the lack of center depth we have, especially now with Bjelica having missed games, having another center definitely wouldn't hurt. But in my opinion, definitely not anything big. I've got some other names right here. If you could split picks for Kenrich Williams in Oklahoma City, he's a forward. I like him.
That could be good, 100%.
Mo Harkless, if the Sacto's looking to sell, if you could just get him for a pick, size and experience. Same with Thaddeus Young. And my dream option is Nurkic in terms of him not making a ton of money and with Portland blowing things up. But I don't see it. I think we'd have to trade Wiseman and someone else to get it. And I just don't think that's really smart, seeing as Nurkic has had injury history and they'd probably want to pick because they're rebuilding. So I think you just stay put or make a very small move.
100%. What about like a Mo Bamba? He's entering. No. Okay.
No.
I feel like he would fit this team, but he is a free agent coming up. And
he's a free agent coming up, and he's going to want money, and he's still like he's not a center you could put into a playoff game and feel confident that he's going to, let alone thrive, survive. And I don't want to be trading for a guy who can do that. Like I think Rashawn Holmes, assuming you're not playing like Chris Paul for the series, what we may have to do. Like Chris Paul is a guy who is going to abuse a center that can't cover a pick and roll very well, and I don't know how well Rashawn Holmes could do that. But in a first-round series against the Lakers, yeah, give me Rashawn Holmes to throw in for 15 minutes and bang with Davis and, give me 6 fouls of him as opposed to Bjelica, who's just going to get worked every time.
100%.
That's just my opinion, I think. We've seen it last year when Looney was hurt and we've had to play smaller. It can really suck playing against bigger teams when you have a lack of big guys. And at this rate, because we don't have 2 of our 3 big guys able to play, we're one, God forbid, no injuries, but we're one Looney tweaked ankle away from rolling into a game with no centers.
Exactly. Definitely a lot of big men out there. We'll see what the Warriors do. Coming up next on the Corcoran Cap, moving from NBA to college basketball, Syracuse also on fire. We're talking about more basketball. You will not want to miss it, so stay tuned. Welcome back. Segment number 2 on episode 3 of the Corcoran Cap, moving from professional hoops to college hoops. Syracuse basketball had a massive week along with the Warriors. We're here to talk about that right here, right now. I'm your host, Sam Corcoran, and joining me as always is Zach Kopelman to my right. Zach, what's going on, buddy? How you doing?
Always a good week when Syracuse wins, man. You know that.
It's that simple. And yeah, speaking of winning, Syracuse, they struggled at first, but now they're on a 3-game win streak, starting to be on a bit of a roll recently. And we played 2 games this week. One was last Tuesday, and then you had Louisville on Saturday. By the time this episode comes out, the BC game will have happened, but we're recording this before that. So unfortunately, we can't talk about that too much, but let's talk about the other 2 games, the NC State game and the Louisville game, starting with the first one, the NC State game. And I think the biggest takeaway from this game, and this is something that I talked about earlier on the last week, I believe. We played Wake last Saturday, and the starting 5 really just came together and dominated. This game, they dominated even more. 89 points from the starting 5, and guess how many points the team scored in total? 89. So the starting
89.
5 scored, starting 5 scored all of their points. And we've definitely started to see this trend now. We had NC State. We'll talk about Louisville later. Zach, do you think the starting 5 is really starting to come together? Or do you really think that this is just like 3 easy opponents in a row where you had Wake, NC State, Louisville, or is this just a group of talented guys that are ready to come together and starting the bond?
Louisville might be reeling, but NC State's a pretty tough team, though. That you look at a 10-13 record, it doesn't look great. They're a pretty strong team. You have, I think his name's Sebron, who's their leading scorer. You got a pretty good freshman point guard. They're a high scoring team. The starters obviously played well, very good shooting. I have a feeling that every time Swider's on, the starters are going to have a good game. It's kind of feeling like that. It's kind of feeling like Swider's been the X factor recently. He shot 4 for 4 from 3 against NC State. So, I mean, you can see when he's on, the team plays well.
Yeah, 100%. And speaking of the three ball, I'll talk about Swider in a minute. Syracuse was 57.9% from 3 the other day, and against NC State. And I saw a tweet earlier. They're up in the mid 50s for their 3 points of percentage. And this is how this team is built based on kind of small ball. You have Edwards, who's obviously the big man. You have Jimmy Boeheim, who's meant to be a stretch 4. He's kind of a bit undersized for that position. Swider, Boeheim, Buddy Boeheim, Gerard, all shooters. So this team is really built for 3-point shooting, and now it's starting to really come together, and you're really starting to see the lethal attack of this Syracuse offense. And yeah, I mean, Cole Swider has really been the X factor. It's, this team has really been on and off recently, I feel like, but when Cole Swider has been on, he's really been just contributing a lot. And I definitely think he has a big part of it. I think the more consistent play of Buddy Boeheim has done pretty well. Joe Girard also he's still a bit inconsistent. He has some flaws here and there, but he's been doing well. And we're going to talk about Jesse Edwards a bit later in the show because I have a lot to say about him. But obviously, I said all 89 points were scored by the starting 5, and that means at the bench, you have Anselm, you have Samirtorrance, you have Benny Williams. If you want to throw in a guy like Patty Casey or John Bolajak, even though they don't really play that much, you could throw them in there. But not much help from the bench, which is very concerning for a team in the ACC where you got to play teams like Duke. You got the ACC tournament coming up. If you want to make a run like in March Madness, which if Syracuse is playing like this, that could very much happen. I know the record does not speak tournament right now, but if they can make a solid run towards the end of the year, and I definitely think they can, their schedule gets a bit easier. You have BC tonight. Saturday, I believe you have who do they have Saturday?
Virginia Tech.
Tech
in Blacksburg.
And then BC, you have BC back at the Dome next Saturday. So I don't know if they play a game in between then, but definitely getting a bit easier for Syracuse right now. But the bench needs to deliver. And Zach, do you think that Syracuse can dive deeper into their bench, or does the 3 bench players they have, do they just need to perform more, or is it a bit of a mix of both?
This isn't a very deep team. Patty Casey is what he is, and he's your most experienced bench player. The rest of the guys are kind of either walk-ons, they don't really play. I mean, is Chaz Owens ever going to play? Is John Bolajak ever going to give you meaningful minutes? So you have your 3 guys. Benny Williams, obviously a highly recruited player. Torrance is a good transfer. Frank Anselm gives you good backup center minutes. But you look at them against NC State. No one except for Benny Williams played more than 10 minutes, and they took a combined 1 shot. So it's not that the bench isn't playing well. It's that they either don't get the minutes or they don't get the shot attempts because there's only 3 of them. They're usually out there with the starters. I mean, Torrance will come in late and get his 2 points every game. Benny Williams will get an occasional shot up, get to the free throw line, but they're not really relied on to score, which in some ways is good because they can't score, but in other ways, it hinders the team because we don't have a good bench option that can come in and give us 5-10 points like that.
Exactly. And I definitely think, this team is very limited on the bench. I'm totally with you. Patty Casey, he's a transfer from the College of the Sciences, which does not sound like a college. D3 school. You have Samirtorrance, who's, yeah, exactly. You have Samirtorrance, who's kind of, he's not really a scorer. He's more of a guy who's going to come in there and really just like be a game facilitator. It seems like he's going to get.
I'll tell you what, Torrance will come in and he gets into the paint pretty efficiently. He just doesn't finish. He'll either kick out or, he'll miss a layup occasionally. But I do think he's our best penetrator, but he struggles scoring sometimes. He hit a 3 last game. I'll give him that. I don't think I've seen him do that all season.
Exactly. He did hit a 3. And to be fair, the NC State game, I believe he was coming fresh off an injury that game. So, I'm going to be fair. I'll be fair with him. Or I think it was It was either that game or the Wake game where he was coming fresh off an injury. So still starting to recover. So you can give him that. Benny Williams has been making an impact. I know we talked about that last time. Might not say it on paper, but it does seem like he's doing a lot more. He's getting to know the system more. Usually it was like, oh, we're hyping up Benny, and then it all falls down. Now we kind of know what to expect of him. You're looking at a developmental guy who's working his way up and should be starting next year. And so far he's
yeah, I mean, you're exactly right. I don't mean to interrupt, but there's one play that really stuck out to me last Saturday against Louisville, where you can tell he's really still developing. He made a really smart play where he cut into the paint. There was no one back there, and he kind of eased off. He didn't fully drop it in the blocker spot. I think it was Benny threw a pass his way, and he couldn't get there. So he's starting to make the right plays. He's just not 100% confident in his decisions. And I think once it all clicks for him, he's going to be a pretty good player.
Yeah, exactly. I definitely think Benny Williams is on track to be a developmental guy, and you can maybe see him make more of an impact down the line. But yeah, definitely NC State, definitely a great offensive performance for Syracuse. It was against one of the worst defensive teams in the country, but still, you wanted to see that offense from a team that's been struggling on offense. Now, moving on to Louisville, where you had an even better offense performance and a significantly better defensive performance. And it was much of the same. The starting five really got it going. The bench did show up a bit more. Actually, they did have a bit more of an opportunity to do so due to the fact that, I mean, Louisville was just not a good team, if we're being completely real. This was an easy win for Syracuse. They won handily. But Zach, I'll start off with you. Let's talk about Jesse Edwards for a bit. What you got to say about his performance?
You know what? Jesse Edwards is really thriving this year, partially because he really looks like the most improved player in the ACC, or at least the most improved center. But I think the spacing gives him that advantage. He kind of operates on his own in the paint a lot. He's gotten a lot stronger, so he has the ability to do so and play well there. Yeah, I just think he's been playing well, especially recently, because they leave him in the paint, and they don't know how strong he is. He's still a slender looking guy. And they get him good looks because they're afraid of us from three now. We've been hitting, so he gets open in the paint.
He does, exactly. And Jesse Edwards, I mean, I think he's been really starting to improve all year. We knew he was going to be a starter this year. We knew what to expect of him. Just a guy who can really get in the paint and dominate the paint. And that's exactly what he's been doing. I believe he was like 9 for 11 on Saturday, I believe, something like that.
9 for 11. Yep.
Yeah, 19 points. Just, I mean, overall dominant in the paint. I think he had 7 or 8 rebounds, something like that. And I mean, honestly, you can make a solid argument that Jesse Edwards has been the best center in the ACC this year. I think it's him or probably the Duke center. I think that's another way to go.
Depending on who you see as the Duke center, Banchero or Mark Williams, I think they're both a little bit better than him. I think if you consider Armando Bacot a center at UNC, he's probably a little bit better. But Jesse still has another year. Obviously, he's improving a lot, and he's thriving with the spacing on this team.
Yeah, the spacing has been key for him. I think that's also been a big factor. I think when he wasn't getting that space, he kept fouling a lot. The past 3 games, I believe he has not fouled out. He's still getting in, like, he's the center. Teams are always targeting him because he is a very aggressive center. So teams are always targeting him, driving into the paint, trying to get that foul from him. But overall, he's been making sure that he stays out of foul trouble, and his defensive performances have been very good, whether he stays in and out of foul trouble. So overall, Jesse Edwards has been doing a pretty good job for Syracuse so far. And if I look at some other stats from this game, it was much of the same from the starting 5, obviously. You had Jesse Edwards with 19, Buddy Boeheim with 19, Gerard with 15, Jimmy with 14, Swider with 11. Off the bench, you had a few guys off the bench. Everyone got minutes because they won 92-69. So pretty good game. Rebounding, too, was pretty big for Syracuse. Anselm had 3 boards, Gerard had 3 boards, and Swider had 5. So definitely this team seems to be a lot more in sync with each other. Not only the starting 5, but just everyone is playing very smart basketball and knowing what to do. I know it's Louisville. I know it's a bad team. I know this team's kind of on a run of some weak opponents. You had Wake, you had NC State, Louisville, Clemson was back then. You beat Pitt that one time. You lost them the other time. Probably the worst loss of the season. And coming up, you're still in a somewhat of an easy run. You have BC. You have at BC tonight, or it will be yesterday when you guys are listening to this or watching this. At Virginia Tech Saturday. At BC, hosting BC on Saturday. Monday at the Dome against Georgia Tech. The final stretch of the year is a bit rough. The last 4 games at Notre Dame, hosting Duke, at UNC, and hosting Miami. UNC right after Duke's going to be a tough game. And obviously, we'll be talking about that later on. But right now, if you can win your next 4 games, you are very much back into tournament contention.
I wouldn't sleep on these games. I mean, I think BC is going to be a pretty easy game for Syracuse, hopefully. You never really know with this team, but they've been on recently, so I think that they'll handle that pretty well. Virginia Tech is a pretty sneaky good team. They got some good players, and they're pretty well above 500. So you got to watch out when you're in Blacksburg. But I think they have a solid chance every game leading up to the Duke game. And if they can handle that, I think they can hold their own for the rest of the season. I agree.
Absolutely. Virginia Tech is on a 4-game win streak. They did just beat Pitt back-to-back games. They beat Florida State in one of those wins. Their last loss was to Miami. So this Virginia Tech team, they're 14-10. I mean, it's a pretty good team so far. They are 8-3 at home. They're 6-7 in conference play. Syracuse sits right above them in the ACC standings based on conference record, but that's also Virginia Tech has played one more game, with that one more game being a loss. So definitely a tough schedule for this week for the Orange. Not the toughest you're going to expect, but 2 road games. BC you should win the BC game. They're 4-7 in ACC play, 9-12. They haven't really beaten anyone that significant this year. It seems like they have.
Yeah, and I really think they struggle with scoring. They might have a little bit more of a balanced attack, but they don't have that high scoring guy who's going to give the Syracuse defense issues. And I think that's actually a very good thing, considering this team does at points struggle on defense. But if they can go out there, shoot well, move the ball well on offense and put up some points, I think that's going to give them a fine chance to win.
100%. Definitely have to do that. Well, that's all the time we have to talk about Syracuse. Coming up, segment 3, moving from basketball to the NFL. We're talking about the Niners. They did lose a few coaches this week. You're not going to want to miss that. Stay tuned. Welcome back. Segment 3 on episode 3 of the Corcoran Cap, talking about 49ers. Big week for them, even though they're out of the playoffs. I mean, it's the offseason. It does kind of suck. Rohit, always joining me today. Rohit, how you doing, man? It's been offseason. The offseason starting for the Niners. How you feeling about that?
Well, I mean, I'm doing pretty good. And honestly, this offseason is going to be pretty big for the Niners, especially because we know we got our quarterback waiting.
Exactly. Yeah, we got Lance in the backup. Lance was backing up last year. Now he's ready to roll. And we do have some coaching changes that are it's gonna hurt Lance. It could help Lance. We'll have to see. But a few coaches have left this team. And let's start with the first coach that left. That was Richard Hightower, our special teams coordinator. And now, Rohit, let's hear from you. What do you think about this? I mean, honestly, the 49ers did have a very bad year on special teams. So is this too big of a deal?
Honestly, not really. It's honestly been more of a downward trend from 2017 to 2021. Richard Hightower's been here from 2017 to 2021, and if you look at the statistics and all the rankings for special teams, Niners have just been getting progressively worse and worse as the years progressed. And last year they finished something around 27 in terms of special.
Yeah, they were something like 27th or 30. I think it was 27th or something like that. It was pretty bad.
Yeah, our return game was absolutely terrible on both kicking and receiving. I mean, field goals were fine, but that's honestly more a testament to Robbie Gould as a kicker. And then punting was, punting.
Exactly, yeah.
But I'm pretty sure it was just an expired contract thing. It's not really that big of a loss. It's not like whoever does come in is going to have big shoes to fill. Honestly, if you do anything better than 27th, it's also going to be an improvement.
100%. And I definitely think that Richard Hightower, I think the reason why he got another job was because of the performance against the Green Bay Packers, which, to be fair, I think was caused by their special teams. I think the Niners, they blocked a punt. Yeah, they blocked a field goal. They did phenomenal on special teams. At the end of the day, the Packers had the worst special teams in the league by far. And now they got Rich Bisaccia, who I thought would be a fantastic candidate for the Niners to get. The other candidate I thought would be Joe Judge. He's now back in New England. So now they're looking to replace him. And, special teams coordinators, if I'm being completely real, I don't really know that many, but I think you're really just looking for a guy who knows how to work with a ton of players. That's why Joe Judge got a head coaching job. That's why Rich Bisaccia was such a highly praised head coach. They knew how to work with a lot of players. They knew how to build the locker room chemistry. And you're really looking for a guy like that. And personally, I think I would go somebody in-house. An assistant coach would be a phenomenal person to do. If I look at the assistant coaches, I'll let Rojas speak, but I'm going to look at some coaches while you talk.
I mean, honestly, I'm in the same boat as you. I honestly don't really know much about special teams coordinators, but all I really know is that you just got to bring a bunch of people together from a bunch of different sides of the football, because when you're looking at special teams, you're going to see a lot of offensive and defensive players just get snaps, running towards guys, trying to get people down before, they can actually break a return. Or if you're receiving, then trying to get a big return and have everybody play their part. So special teams coordinators are going to have to know how to just meld a bunch of moving parts together to create a cohesive unit. And honestly, I think that was what was truly missing for the Niners over the past couple of seasons, mostly because of injuries. We probably
100%.
used around 5 to 6 different returners throughout the year. We had one pretty good return, and then he got injured. And then we had JaMychal Hasty, and every single time JaMychal Hasty tried to return a kick, and I'm just like, I'm saying, I know whenever I see JaMychal Hasty return a kick, I'm just like, dude, don't even try to run, just go down. I don't care if we have to go 99 yards. Do not try to run with the football, please.
100%. So looking at this coaching thing that the Niners have put up, I think it's a bit outdated because they have Clay Kubiak as defensive quality control. Last year, he was the Vikings offensive coordinator, and now I believe he's with Denver, maybe? I don't know. He's somewhere else, if I'm correct. Yeah, son of Gary Kubiak. What the assistant special teams coach last year was Matthew Harper. I don't know much about him, obviously. I mean, I don't really know any of these guys, if I'm being completely real. There's definitely a few I recognize, but Matthew Harper is one guy you could promote if you wanted to. Again, it's a bit outdated. I know Mike McDaniel's not there. John Embry's still up, and we're going to talk about John Embry in a sec. But yeah, I mean, as Rohit and I said, you're really looking for a guy who's looking to bond players. So that's what you really need in a special teams coordinator. Moving on, though, a bigger loss that came later in the week. I think it was a day later, and this is something that I think we were all expecting. I got a tip that Miami was gonna hire Mike McDaniel, and they ended up doing that. So that was something that was just coming from a mile away. Everyone should have seen it. I know I got a tip that said oh, McDaniel's the front runner. But I think it was pretty well known that McDaniel was going to get this job. And personally, I mean, I'm honestly a bit surprised that Miami wanted him in particular. Yes, he's an experienced guy. He's offensive minded. The tip I got was they wanted someone like that, and that's why they hired McDaniel. But honestly, I think he needed a bit more time before he's a head coach. So, I mean, it's not the biggest deal. I definitely think that McDaniel's a very respected head coach within the 49ers organization. At the end of the day, though, I do think he could have stayed a year behind and would have been a great head coach next year, but Miami gets him before that. Miami sees something in him, and you know what? I see something in him too. I think he can do really well. I do think he can backfire, but I'm not going to complain too much about it. That's Miami's decision. Congrats to Mike McDaniel. Now, Rohit, if you want to talk about McDaniel for a little bit, I also want to ask you that question. Do you think Kyle Shanahan and the 49ers offense will be fine without him, or do you think he was a pivotal part for the 49ers?
I think that honestly could go both ways. I mean, I think Mike McDaniel did have a huge part in the 49ers' success, especially in the run game. Because remember, he was the run game coordinator before he got the formal position of offensive coordinator last year. And from pretty much what everybody heard from the organization, it's it was always that massive brain trust of Shanahan, McDaniel, and then whoever the defensive coordinator was, Saleh or D'Amico Ryans. So it was always just those three kind of just chopping it up until the early hours of the morning, just trying to figure out the offensive schemes, defensive schemes, and countering and all that. So that's a pretty sizable chunk of the brain trust. And wherever Kyle Shanahan has gone in his football career, McDaniel's pretty much been close behind this entire time. So honestly, happy for him to get a coaching job of his own to kind of just, do his own thing. Probably
Exactly.
one of the brightest minds in football, and now he probably gets to show it on a much larger stage than he ever really could.
Exactly, 100%. And this is the fourth assistant from that Washington team back in 2013 that is now a head coach in the NFL, which is, it's kind of crazy how that just all fell apart after they fired Mike Shanahan as their head coach. Everyone just dipped behind. They all thought it was Kyle Shanahan and his buddies, but it was Kyle Shanahan and his buddies who were also talented at what they do. Personally, for me, I do think that the 49ers will be fine without McDaniel. I think it's not as big as a loss as if we lost D'Amico Ryans, in my opinion. I think Kyle Shanahan, one of the best offensive minds in football. I think, he's a guy who can do coaching and offensive coordinator duties. I do believe he did that for a while. Obviously, you have assistants. You had Mike LaFleur. You had, obviously, Mike McDaniel. So now you're willing to take a step forward. And I think Kyle Shanahan, I will not be surprised if he doesn't hire an offensive coordinator. But you also have good offensive assistants. And let's talk about one that the Niners brought in, which I absolutely love. Anthony Lynn, the former Chargers head coach. He was with the Bills for a while. He was in one season, he went from Bills running backs coach to Bills offensive coordinator to Bills interim head coach. And then he was with the Chargers. And I definitely think the one thing that really killed him, he was a great head coach, in my opinion. The one thing that killed him was time management. And that's what really seals the deal. One of the worst has had some of the worst clock management in football. Last year, he was with Detroit, a team that on offense, I mean, let's be real. It's Detroit. I mean, there wasn't really much they could do. Their best receiver was a fourth-round rookie. Jared Goff's a middle-of-the-pack quarterback. They did build the O-line pretty well. The offensive line is one of the best in the league in Detroit, in my opinion. But overall, this is a fantastic hire for the 49ers, and I definitely think he's going to contribute a lot to this team. Would not be surprised if it's a short tenure because another team might want to bring him back, give him a second chance at head coach. But personally, I think Anthony Lynn being with the 49ers is going to be a fantastic hire. He's going to take some of the role that Mike McDaniel took behind. And I know there were a lot of people saying that the 49ers hired Anthony Lynn because they were afraid Mike McDaniel was gone. And I 100% agree with that. I definitely think that Anthony Lynn, they needed someone to fill in Mike McDaniel's shoes. Obviously, Mike McDaniel is one of the brightest minds in football, one of the brightest and youngest minds in football. So it's not really going to be the same. But at the same time, Anthony Lynn, well-respected head coach, well-respected assistant in the league. I think this is a fantastic hire for the 49ers. And if we want to talk about McDaniel replacement, I mean, you might not even need one. Now you have Kyle Shanahan and Anthony Lynn running the show.
Yeah, the funny thing is with Anthony Lynn, it's wherever he's gone, that team has had a top 10 rushing attack through like whatever metric you want to see, like yards per attempt, just overall yards, touchdowns, whatever you want to call it. Whatever metric there is, Anthony Lynn has created a top 10 rushing attack wherever he's gone. And the Niners, they were around maybe like, I want to say around the top 10, maybe a little outside of it this year. And at least like
they definitely have, I mean, they always consistently have a top rushing attack. And I know a lot of people have been saying, I know the thing is like, I always say like Kyle Shanahan can work with any running back. A lot of people are saying that's starting to fall off, but I disagree. I personally think like, yeah, you can bring in a better running back. You can use draft capital on a better running back. But honestly, at the end of the day, Elijah Mitchell has been a phenomenal running back for us. Is he one of the best backs in football? No, but I think Anthony Lynn can open up more and make him one of the best running backs in football. And maybe like you don't even have to draft a running back again, honestly. I know you took Sermon round 3. Hasn't worked out so far. Elijah Mitchell's probably been, I would say, the second or third best rookie running back behind Najee Harris and maybe Javonte Williams. He was that. You could even go, if you wanted to, with your second round pick. If there's a running back out there that you want to take, go and take him, in my opinion. Boost this running back core, and you're going to have the best rushing attack in football.
I mean, the funny thing is, what's interesting about the 49ers and how they run the football is literally everybody on this team is going to be able to run the football now. We already know what Debo can do in the backfield. Brandon Ayuk has shown some ability to run with the football his rookie season. We've even handed the ball off to George Kittle and just let him say, "Hey, see that guy over there? Run through his face. That'd be fun."
Exactly.
I mean, obviously, we got Juice, Kyle Juszczyk. We got, and obviously Elijah Mitchell, Trey Sermon. Well, I don't want to get back to that Trey Sermon pick, and then this would also kind of go in with Anthony Lynn and our second-round pick from last year, Aaron Banks. I think those two picks were picks for a Trey Lance-centered offense. So maybe that's why they weren't really featured as much. Obviously, there's growing pains of adjusting to the NFL, adjusting to scheme, and maybe they just didn't really fall into place immediately. But with Lance starting to come in, and even Lance can actually move around in the pocket and run with the football. So again, everyone on this team can run with the football. And now you have one of the best offensive minds as a head coach, Kyle Shanahan. You have a guy who knows how to just bring the best out of everybody in terms of running the football and knows how to work with people, knows how to make an offense great. Because credit to Anthony Lynn for this as well. I don't think Justin Herbert would have won Offensive Rookie of the Year without Anthony Lynn.
Oh, it probably wouldn't have. No. And I think I was just looking at an article real quick, 3 free agents that they could bring in because of Anthony Lynn. I think one was a backup offensive lineman, interior lineman, which actually could help considering that I do think now Banks should move to a starting role, in my opinion, and Laken Tomlinson will probably leave this team. So you could bring him in. Evan Brown is the name. So that's a name you could remember. Not really people know him. The other two definitely caught my eye. Justin Jackson did pretty well with him in Los Angeles. Definitely could use some running back depth, especially. And the third one, a big need in free agency, is a backup quarterback. How about a Tyrod Taylor, a guy that Anthony Lynn brought in to back up Herbert? But obviously, I mean, he had that lung injury with which was crazy. So him, I've been talking about Geno Smith a lot because you get that Seahawks intel. He fits the system well. Tyrod Taylor with Anthony Lynn, probably a bit more pricey, but also is also a fantastic scheme fit. I wanted him last year, if I'm being completely honest. I thought Tyrod Taylor would be a good bridge quarterback if they wanted to trade Jimmy Garoppolo. But we only have a few minutes left. I want to talk about the coaches who left. John Embry, it was a confusing situation. He went to Miami. He's now an assistant in Miami. I think what the Niners want to do, he was an assistant head coach / tight ends coach. They want to move him to just tight ends coach, give him a pay cut. He didn't want it, so they fired him. I mean, it was strange, but he's now in Miami. We're going to have to find a new guy. I know Kittle highly regarded him. Zach Yenser, I've never really heard of him. Offensive line coach, don't know where he went. And then Butch Barry, he's now with Denver as an offensive. He's the offensive line coach in Denver, went from San Francisco to Denver. There could be other guys leaving. Those are the 3 leaving. If you want to finish that off, Rohit, add on to that, go ahead.
I mean, yeah, the Embry situation was confusing, but I think it's mostly just like a title thing, especially with – I'm not sure if the Niners already knew they were bringing in Anthony Lynn, and I'm not even sure if Shanahan, Lynch, and McDaniel knew that when McDaniel got the Miami job that Embry was going to follow with him. So I don't know how much we can read into that, but I'm not even sure what Anthony Lynn's official title is yet. We just know like
he's assistant head coach.
So maybe they already had plans to bring in Anthony Lynn for that title. So maybe
I would think, yeah. I mean, there's multiple assistant head coaches, but I think Anthony Lynn personally would be a better assistant head coach than John Embry, a bit more experience there.
Yeah.
Definitely. Well, lots of transition with the 49ers and lots of transition this offseason with the Oakland Athletics considering coaches and managers. When we come back, we're going to talk about that. Stay tuned. You will not want to miss it. Welcome back. Segment number 4 of this 3rd episode of the Corcoran Cap. Here to talk about baseball, talking about the Oakland A's. I'm your host, Sam Corcoran, and joining me, as always, is Jake Hart. Jake, how are you doing today?
Doing good. Battling the weather here in Indiana, but I'm excited to talk A's baseball.
Definitely, yeah. Weather's up in Syracuse, getting a bit better, but it's been rough. But anyways, let's move to sunny California, talk about the Oakland A's. And, honestly, Jake, I know we were having a lot of trouble coming up with the topic today because there's just like it's the dead period for baseball, if we're being real. We're still like the lockout's been just pushing everything aside. There's nothing really going on. But there is one thing that we just did not really talk about during this entire thing when we've been recording for the first 2 episodes. That's the transition from Bob Melvin to our new manager, Mark Kotsay. If you have been living under a rock, Bob Melvin is obviously now with the San Diego Padres. So it's now time to talk about Mark Kotsay, new era for the Oakland Athletics. And let's start talking about Bob Melvin. And let's just talk about what we're losing with Bob Melvin. Jake, I'll let you start. Is there anything in particular you think that we're going to be losing with Bob Melvin's departure that you want to discuss?
I mean, the thing with baseball managers, as it's been said in the past, like they don't teach their players anything new, right? Like especially the manager, not the hitting coach and all that. But it's mostly player personnel decisions and bullpen management. And I'm not an analyst of how well our bullpen is being utilized and all that stuff, but Melvin and his player personnel he's exceptional. One of the best in the game. I mean, I think what best says it is one of my favorite Melvin moments, actually, when Cespedes a few years ago, when he was on the Mets, is like, I don't remember exactly what the question was, but it was along the lines of, who's your favorite manager? And he said, Bob Melvin, and I'd play for him again anytime. And it's like, okay, you're employed by another team, but loving it as an A's fan.
Yeah, definitely. We're going to talk about Bob Melvin's favorite moment for me in a hot sec, but I'm totally with you. This is a guy who takes the A's are a very low budget team, very small market. So you're not really going to get those superstars that you see. I mean, I think I would say the only superstar that the A's have had this past decade is Josh Donaldson. Yoenis Cespedes is probably up there as close. I mean, he was personally my favorite A of all time, but I wouldn't say superstar you're looking at right there. Sonny Gray you could also put up there, but I think Josh Donaldson is a bona fide superstar, and he was that with the Oakland Athletics. And I think you're just looking at a guy who knows how to develop players. Josh Donaldson, when he came to the A's, he was a catcher, and now he became one of the best, if not the best, third baseman in all of baseball. So it's kind of ridiculous how that happened. I mean, you also have, I would actually put other superstars. I would say Olsen and Chapman you could put up there as well. I just think Donaldson is definitely better, has been better with the A's. And I think he has an overall better career than Olsen and Chapman so far. Could be too early to tell because Olsen and Chapman still have some time left to prove it to them. But overall, you're losing the guy who knows how to develop players, taking players who really just do not know, like who have not succeeded on other teams, and taking them and really just developing them into guys who can be everyday players that other teams are going to want. And, always the A's, they love this Moneyball strategy. At the end of the time where you have guys who are trying to, when the A's are struggling, you're trying to trade guys. These guys are ready to be traded from the point where you sign them for nothing, or you got them as the player to be named later from another trade or something like that. So you're losing one of the smartest minds in all of baseball. And it definitely sucks to see him go. And I think the Padres is going to be a fantastic fit for him. They needed a guy who could take all the talent they have and go forward. Now Melvin, not only does he get one superstar, he gets 3 superstars, probably even more. I think we also said Scherzer was a Padre on the last podcast. He's a Met. I don't know where I got that from, but he's a New York Met. But that's not. I just want to clarify that. Want to get that out somehow. But anyways, I've been talking for enough time. Jake, you don't have any thoughts on that, or you want to move on to? Do you want to talk about?
One of the big things that we're missing is not actually him leaving, but it's what his departure says about the A's. And again, it's something that as an A's fan, you kind of have to accept. But what does it say to the players when you're just – because, the reason he left is we weren't willing to pay him $4 million. And it's okay, that's not that much money. We paid Marco Estrada $4 million 3 years ago to come pitch 5 games. It's not a good look for the organization.
Oh, it's a terrible look. And also the fact that he was under contract and he left. That's terrible. And that just goes to show the cheapness of this team.
It was purely budget. And again, that does tell things to players and potential players that would come over in a trade or free agency, and that it sets a tone for the team and the next 2 to 3 years of rebuilding.
Oh, absolutely. And honestly, you look at this team, they have not done much in free agency. I think they brought that one pitcher in from the Rays. Other than that, they've lost Canada. They've lost Sterling Marte. There's definitely more guys who are probably going to leave once the lockout ends. So overall, you're really just looking at a team that's going to be rebuilding, and I think this could be a very long rebuild, unfortunately. So we'll have to see how it goes. Maybe Kotsay will be the man for that. But before we talk about Kotsay, I just want to talk about my favorite Bob Melvin moment. And I know the Yoenis Cespedes is more of an indirect moment. I was thinking more of a direct moment. And I just want to talk. It's not really a moment, but it's just the 2018 season in general. This was a team who was 500 for the first 2-3 months of the season. They just could not get above 500. It was win-loss, win-loss, win-loss. 2017 was one of the worst years for the A's in the past decade. And overall, I think a lot of fans wanted Bob Melvin out. This team wasn't really going anywhere. They had some young talent that didn't seem to be being utilized. They were not getting the other help that they needed. And overall, I think Bob Melvin really just turned this team around, got the guys he needed. He took barely anything in his head. He had like pebbles in his hand and took that and turned them into granite and just wanted to go all in with that 2018 team, it seemed like. And I don't know if he was expecting that, but it seemed like how the confidence he showed during that was ridiculous. Also, one thing that he did do the 2018 season that has stuck in the MLB that was kind of new that Bob Melvin did was the bullpen strategy where they basically used the bullpen all game. Now, I know this didn't work in the playoffs that year, but that was pretty cool. It definitely helped us get to the playoffs. But overall, I mean, it has stuck in the MLB. It was one game. I could say I am a bit of a defender of Bob Melvin's idea with that, and it didn't really last in the A's organization for too long. But it was definitely a good strategy. It definitely helped them get forward, especially with the rotation they had this year, which was somewhat weak. So he decided to implement new things, which I really like of him. One of the smartest minds in baseball again.
Yeah, Liam Hendricks will never be forgiven. I don't care how good he is now. The Yankees beating us. Oh,
that was brutal. I remember we had that water polo game. We kept going in and out of the pool to try to go to the bathroom and then we just went to go check the score every time. So definitely a gut wrencher. But you know what? We made it next year, and we didn't do anything next year either. So, and the year after that. But you know what? It is what it is. It's a new era for the A's. And let's talk about the new manager, Mark Kotsay. So before we get into that, just a few facts about him. So Mark Kotsay played in the MLB from 1997 to 2013. He was a first baseman, and he played for 3 seasons with the A's from 2004 to 2007. I believe we made the playoffs one of those years, which was 2006. That was the year we lost to the Tigers in the ALCS. His coaching career after 2013, took the year off in 2014, came back in 2015 as the hitting coach for the San Diego Padres. A year after that, became the bench coach for the A's and has been that ever since until now, where he is the manager. And let's talk about, I mean, there's obviously a ton of other managerial candidates for the A's, but Jake, do you think this is the best decision that the A's could have made at the manager job? Was there another guy that you wanted?
I mean, for me, I always said it was Kotsay or it was Ron Washington. And I wanted someone who was experienced with the A's culture, knew what he was getting into. I didn't want some ambitious manager who's going to, come in and try and shake everything up. And we've got our process, and I've accepted that we're going to be good in 2 to 3 years, and we'll be in that playoff hunt once again. So he just needs to be able to ride the wave and develop players like Melvin did. And if there's anything that he can do to help players sign for a little bit cheaper than they would normally, I'd be very happy with that.
Yeah, definitely. It's definitely hard I feel like being the manager of the A's has to be one of the hardest jobs in baseball. Same with the Rays. I know Kevin Cash has done a phenomenal job there. But any small market team, it is so hard being the manager because you gotta convince these players, hey, come to the worst stadium in baseball. Come to Oakland, California, which is, let's be real. The A's are the second team in the Bay Area. As much as I hate to say it, I think the Giants obviously get more media attention, which was another topic we considered discussing because it's kind of ridiculous how much more media coverage the Giants get. And it does piss me off. But back to Mark Kotsay. I definitely think he was probably the front runner the entire time, him and Ron Washington. I think in-house was definitely the move to go for the A's. I don't think bringing someone out of house, that's a massive risk in my opinion because you're bringing someone in who you don't really know. And I feel like they brought in Brad Ausmus, who I think they interviewed for the managerial job, but he ended up being bench coach, which I think Brad Ausmus has had 2 mediocre, pretty bad stints in the MLB with 2 teams. So glad we didn't go that way. But overall, I definitely think in-house was definitely a good idea. It seems like this team, however, it is a bit surprising because it seems like this team wants to, consider they gave Melvin away for nothing. It seems like this team does want to start kind of fresh, but maybe at the same time they're looking for the Bob Melvin 2.0. Maybe they can save money with Kotsay. Maybe he's going to take those strategies. He's been with Bob Melvin for the past 6 seasons. So sorry, he's been with Melvin for the past 16 seasons. Has been playing with the A's from 04 to 07. So he did play a year with Bob Melvin's predecessor, Bob Guerin, too. So he knows this team pretty well. And many people have been saying that Mark Kotsay is Bob Melvin 2.0. And I think right now it's obviously a bit too early to discuss that. We've never seen him in a managerial role before. But I know we've talked about the cheapness of this organization so far. And as much as I want to say it was to save money, maybe it was because we had Bob Melvin 2.0 behind Bob Melvin and Mark Kotsay, and maybe he can take those tactics that Bob Melvin used and implement them on that team. And we're probably paying him, what, like $1 million maybe? I don't even know what we'd be paying him.
Probably not even.
Not even. Maybe not even. It's
to bump up from bench coach. Like
exactly. It's really not that much. So you're cutting a lot of budget, which could help you get a free agent in. And I mean, this is just a positive outlook, but you're cutting a lot of budget that could get you a free agent in that could help out this organization. And you keep a guy who has been highly respected by a ton of players. That's another thing. Mark Kotsay has been highly respected by some of the A's players. And I bet he's probably a big reason why players want to stay. I know you have Melvin, he's obviously the reason, but Mark Kotsay, the bench coach, they help manage the players a lot. They're the assistant manager. They help do a lot with the players and the player personnel. So definitely another reason why people have wanted to stay in Oakland and wanted to come to Oakland.
Yeah, I mean, I don't disagree with anything. I kind of said what I thought about Kotsay, but backing up a bit, I thought it was interesting that you compared us to the Rays a little bit in terms of like what Kevin Cash was able to do. And it's funny because I want to say that because if you look at our payrolls in the past, they've been pretty similar. And like whatever, bad ballpark and all that. And I know this is a little off topic, but it's interesting because the difference between the A's and the Rays, in my opinion, is that they're both low budget teams, but the Rays are willing to take risks with their moves. Do you know what I mean? Like signing Wander Franco to that massive contract that is the most tradable contract in MLB history, according to some article by, I think it was Bleacher Report. But it's just like they know that in a few years they're going to be able to flip him for a bunch of prospects, for potentially more generational talent. And that's just that's a risk the A's aren't willing to make. And I mean, for good reason. Like the A's have made risky moves with Chris Davis and with Eric Chavez, and they've put Billy Butler. Like it seems like any big deal we sign blows up on our face, and it's a player who is basically irrelevant in a year.
I mean, I think the Chris Davis. Well, the re-signing of Chris Davis definitely blew up in our face. I will say that. Yeah. But anyways, I mean, this is a team that whenever they take a big risk, it never really works out. And I know that that's definitely one of the downsides with what Bob Melvin did here, because I know like you want a ton of players, you want those good players, you need to bring in some star power. And unfortunately, just the guys that he brought in. I mean, Chris Davis, he brought in initially was killing it. The second deal, that killed him. Eric Chavez, again, that's another guy who kind of after his new deal just kind of went down, just spiraled downward. So obviously, I mean, maybe this is one thing that Mark Kotsay can do a bit better than Bob Melvin. We'll have to see. You got anything else you wanted to say?
No, it was good talking about A's baseball, and hopefully something changes soon so we can get some new transactions.
Exactly. I mean, we're kind of talking about stuff that most A's podcasters, most A's fans have been talking about for a while. It's always hard doing the segment. That's why it's 15 minutes. Always like to keep it short. Jake, always a blast having you on. And that is going to do it for episode 3 of the Corcoran Cap. Thank you all so much for watching. I'm doing my weekly Twitter thing. I'm not even going to mention Jake this time. Make sure to follow the guys on Twitter. Zach at ZCope3, Rohit at RohitKanan71, Joel at JoelPettit10. Jake, not even worth mentioning. But anyways, guys, that's going to do it for the episode, and I will see you guys next week. Peace.